The second factor is the message, which is a product of the person's thoughts, carefully put together to create a statement. This process is also called encoding. Content is considered the backbone of communication. This is where the conversation flow is made from, and elements such as nonverbal things, such as gestures, hand movements, and facial expressions, affect the quality of the message. Treatment also affects the feedback of the receiver. For example, if the president announced a certain law of the country that is very vital to the economy and state of the country, he or she must speak fluently and with authority in order to have the correct treatment of the citizens towards the implementation of the said law. If the president will say it in a very lousy and unprofessional way, it might not be taken very seriously by the citizens. The structure of the message should be properly arranged in order to properly convey the message. Code is the language used, the form of communication, whether it was correctly said by proper gestures and expressions, while channels are the medium on how the information flows from one sender or source to the receiver. The five senses of human beings are the channels in communication: hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, and tasting. The message is received by the receiver through the sense of hearing. They will know whether the sender is angry, sad, or calm just by hearing their voice. The receiver will know the emotions of the person talking by seeing their facial expressions. The receiver will know if the sender likes their personality by the way they interact or through their physical interactions. People will know that a place has some unpleasant odor by smelling it, and through tasting, people will know whether they cook something good or something bad. Receiver. The message may not be accepted well if the sender and the receiver is not in sync or is not similar with one another. The receiver will try to understand what the sender is trying to say or do through their actions, which is also referred to as decoding. Being a receiver also means that you must have good communication skills in order to have a smooth flow of conversation between the sender and the receiver. Imagine a conversation between friends. The person or the sender sends a message through chat saying okay. The person on the other end or the receiver might think through negative assumptions that the sender doesn't like them because the receiver did not clarify the message through a follow-up chat. They have misunderstood each other and caused a fight between them. Not knowing that the message okay have a continuation of see you soon, I am excited to meet you. Sometimes when we are having conversations, we have the tendency to respond so fast that we forget to hear the message fully instead of listening actively and carefully. For the communication to be effective, the thinking pattern must be in sync between the sender and the receiver. Belen defined the communication model as no beginning and no end, continuous and ever-changing. Claude Shannon was a research scientist at the Bell Telephone Company. In order to improve communications along telephone lines, he sought to minimize the distortion produced through the communication lines. Warren Weaver applied Shannon's concept of the telephone to human communication. The end result has made it one of the most popular models of communication. It was named Shannon-Weaver Communication Model. The Shannon and Claude includes feedback to the sender from their understanding of the message of the sender. Shannon and Claude's model also introduced noise as part of the communication. Here in our sample, Janrik is the sender. The sender is the originator of the message or the information source that selects the desired message. Encoder is the phone or the transmitter used which converts the messages into signals. The sender's messages converted into signals like waves or binary data, which is able to transmit the messages through cables or satellites. For example, in telephone, the voice is converted into wave signals and it transmits through cables. The noise barrier are outdoor sounds. Receiver is NIS, which is the destination of the message from the sender. The receiver converts those binary data or waves into message which is understandable for the receiver. If the transmission of data is not clear, it will affect the effective communication between sender and receiver. Due to the transmission error or noises, NIS cannot understand generic messages. Based on the decoded message, the receiver gives their feedback to the sender. If noise distorts the message to be clearly sent, it will affect the communication flow between the sender and the receiver. The noise which affects the communication flow are the sound of the woman calling someone else in the background, vehicles, and other outdoor noise. The receiver, or NIS, clearly deals with external noises that affect the messages or signals from external sources. For example, if there is any problem that occur in network, which directly affect the mobile phone communication or distracts the messages. Noise is anything that lessens the fidelity or sharpness or faithfulness to the original message. It may be physical or psychological in nature. One example of a psychological noise is when you are listening in a lecture hall and you are so hungry because you haven't eaten breakfast, which causes you to not be able to focus 100% to what the professor is lecturing about. Your empty stomach is the noise or the barrier for an effective communication. Transactional communication model. The roles of the sender and the receiver in the transactional model of communication are very different from the other models. Instead of calling the participants senders and receivers, we call the people who encounter the communication as communicators. In contrast to the interaction model, which suggests that participants alternately become senders and receivers, the transactional model suggests that we are both senders and receivers at the same time. The transactional communication model emphasizes the two-way, cyclical, and processual nature of communication. Berle's communication model, earlier explained, received backlash from scientists and other experts, saying that the developed model was still more linear to be considered as a process or a transactional model. Osgood's model, as cited by Schramm and Roberts in 1971, cited that both sender and receiver are active communicators with equal standing, and it is also considered as a circular model, as it displays communication in a process that goes in two different directions. In this model, when you decrypt the message, you also encrypt the message and send it back to the sender. Encoding and decoding can continue in one continuous cycle. To illustrate this, let us watch this short movie clip from The Pursuit of Happiness. I'm going to transcribe the audio.